Yay, my actual streamer is being very, very silly and not allowing me to actually unmute myself. But how's it going, guys? I know it's Monday. Mondays suck. Blah blah blah. We're here. How are you guys doing today? I figured we'd do something a little bit different. I know yesterday, or last Monday, we did biblical gender roles. This time, we're going to be doing a little bit of Computing Forever and then video suggestions, if you guys have any that you want to suggest, as long as they're not like 20-minute long videos. Those are not fun to do. But I'm also having one of those days, so I figured I'd also do this while relaxing to some WoW. So if you guys don't like watching that, at the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you will see whatever video I'm currently responding to there. So you will actually be able to watch two things at once and pick whichever one you want to deal with. If you want to look at the still image that is Computing Forever for the first video, and then whatever the hell we end up doing for the next ones, go right ahead. If not, then, well, what are you going to do? But that said, before we begin, there is one thing that I wanted to say. I'm not going to be doing an actual, like, fundraiser type deal for this. I'm starting to develop a problem with fundraisers as much as I like doing them for people who do need them. I've been burned by two of the people that I did fundraisers for, and then I haven't been burned by the other two, so I've got like a coin flip 50-50 that's happened there, and then I've also got another fundraiser, or not fundraiser, but another thing where one of the people that we brought into our house as a rescue ended up being Aaron and being great, and the other person we brought into the house as a rescue ended up having to be kicked out because they sent Aaron to the ER. So I'm getting to the point where, like, people who I help, I'm going to have to be very careful about how I help because of the amount of times I seem to be getting burned when I do so. So I do want to let everybody know that this fundraiser does exist, and it's going to be in the description of this video. It is for a user who most people probably have seen in the chat once before, Puffalopagus. There we go. If you restart your feed, you should be able to actually see it there. Basically, their father died, and they are needing to cover funeral expenses, which is not the greatest. It kind of sucks. I'm sure everybody's been there at least in some form, fashion, or capacity with some family member they weren't expecting to go. So we've all been there in some way. So if you guys are able to help out and support them, their link is there in the description. With that said, also, any details about the Novo situation we're not going to be getting into on this stream, as many of those are personal, and we are wanting to keep those close to the chest. But just know that Aaron is healing. We did actually... It seems as though she won't need surgery, though there was a threat of surgery needing to be a thing that needed to happen at one point. But apparently she is healing okay without it for the time being. So there's that. That is that situation there. So just wanted to get that out there. That's the long and short of that. With that said, the situation as it is that there's the GoFundMe. If you guys did not reset your video, you should be able to actually see that in the chat itself. That again is to Puffalopagus's thing. My brain isn't doing very well. This is the reason why I'm having a stream while I'm doing video gaming and stuff like that. I'm not in the most wonderful of headspaces as of right now. So that said, again, the link is there in the actual chat. Link is also in the description. So if you guys do want to support Puffalopagus and help them with their funeral costs, then that information is there so you can do so. With that said, that's as much as I'm going to be able to get into that for the time being, because again, I hate that a few bad actors have ruined my ability to help people in that way, but unfortunately that is a thing that has happened in more ways than one. So as a result, we're just going to go ahead and go with the safe bet. I'm dropping the link there. If you guys want to support, go ahead. If not, that's entirely up to you. But let us go ahead and move on into the Computing Forever business. So this one was suggested by Lord Bleck right as I burp. Of course, there's a Bleck there of just a different flavor. This one is, of course, Computing Forever, one of our favorite people who we've tackled on the channel a few times, once in live stream form and once in standard video edited form. So we've got a small history with him on the channel. Love isn't lost on David here. So let's go ahead and click and see what happens.
Happens at the UN.
This is all wrong.
Oh, let's go ahead
So I
and do.
go on holidays for a week, and this happens at the UN.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean.
Yes, you most definitely should be in school. So why aren't you? Also, the man-made climate change narrative is actually a massive scam.
Yet
What?
you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you?
Okay, so first thing we have there is when he has this little snide remark. Yes, you should be in school. Why aren't you? Ha 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 ha. I could just go ahead and say, yes, you should just confine yourself to Ireland and please don't get on the internet and speak to anybody outside your country. Why aren't you doing that? I could do that. You'd be doing the exact same thing that he's doing here where Greta's concerned. For those of you who don't know, Greta spoke in front of the United Nations in a plea about climate change. So let's go ahead and see what we've got in store.
You have stolen my dreams and my childhood.
No, I don't think it was the UN who stole your childhood.
Okay, so when you're playing with the United Nations, you recognize that you're not talking to the United Nations, the Council, right? Like, does everybody understand that in the chat? When you're talking in front of the UN, you are attempting to speak to the leaders of all of those nations at the same time. This is not an attempt to speak to the United Nations, the organization. This is speaking to those countries through the United Nations, the organization. Does everybody understand that? A really obvious thing that everybody should be able to understand pretty easily, okay? Hopefully, we all understand that the United Nations is a thoroughfare to be able to speak to multiple countries at the same time without having to do the standard red tape shit, right? Okay, cool. Now that we get that, let's continue.
After all, isn't it your parents who are encouraging you to do this activism?
With your empty words.
So how does he know that? That's my first question. So if my parents were to suggest I do anything, one of those things would not be my channel, first of all. Now, since I'm already established on my channel, yeah, my parents would probably support me in so doing. But none of them would have pushed me into doing atheist activism of any kind. None of them would have pushed me to go and try to rescue people or do fundraisery stuff or help out with any of that stuff. No, I would have been, at least for my dad, that would have been a push to go and join the military, something that I ultimately did not do. So the idea that kid is doing X thing, parent must have pushed kid into doing X thing, there are some times where I can accept that narrative. There are some times when I can't. And in this case, it's hard for me to accept that. Abby says, actually, it is her mom that's been influencing her. Her mother even changed career so she doesn't use things that spew out so much carbon. I mean, okay, that's fair. But again, let's see what David actually says. Let's see what he says. Because he may have pulled that narrative out of his ass, or he may have actually done some research. Who knows?
And yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing.
Citations needed on that one. Anyway, notice...
Okay, so, citations needed on that one. Citations needed that climate change has a negative impact on the world, and as a result, ecosystems are falling. Let's see if we can't find any of those citations. I would just like to point out, I know that it may be hard to actually see here, but if you guys look, on his video, apparently YouTube has recognized that mayhap some citations were needed. As a result, they actually put a link to the global warming article on Wikipedia under David's video. I just thought that was kind of hilarious. But let's see if we can't actually find some of those citations. Obviously, he wants some of those citations to be found. So let's see what we can find. All right. Here's an abstract from ADS, a consensus on consensus, a synthesis of consensus estimates on human-caused global warming. Affiliates are John Cook from the Global Change Institute, University of Queensland, Australia. Naomi Oreskes, Department of the History of Science from Harvard. Peter T. Doran, geology and geophysicist. We have William R. Andred from the Department of Biology, University of Utah, also from the Princeton Environmental Institute. Then we also have Bart Verregen from the Amsterdam University College in the Netherlands. Let's see here. What other affiliates are there on here? What other experts can we pull in here? Ken Rice from the Institute of Astronomy in the University of Edinburgh in the United Kingdom. We also have Mark Richardson from the University of Reading. That is from the California Institute of Technology. He works at a jet propulsion lab, so carbon emissions is also one of those things that would kind of be his purview. All right, so what's this article say? Article says that the consensus of humans are causing the global recent warming is shared by 90 to 100% of publishing climate scientists, according to 6 independent studies by co-authors on this paper. Now, if you are not a publishing scientist, you do not have a comment on this. And when you do, this is because when you publish as a scientist, your work can go in for peer review and then can be cited by other scientists. A good mark for a peer-reviewed study is if that study is used as a citation in other studies. It's an older video, but King Crocoduck actually did a really good breakdown of this, showing how there are certain people, like, say, Hugh Ross, who have a handful of citations under them, but a lot of your people who work at, say, the Creation Institute have almost no citations under their name. And when you look at the citations for their publications, they are usually cited within other Creation Institute literature. As a result, you can pretty easily tell that a majority of the stuff that they say is bunk because it's only being listened to in an insulated echo chamber. This is why having a consensus that is outside of an insulated echo chamber is important. So, what else do we have here? Based on 11,944 abstracts of research papers, of which 4,014 took a position on the cause of recent global warming, the survey of authors in those papers supported the 97% of scientists agreeing consensus that man-made global warming is, in fact, a thing. The only thing up for debate is how much, to what extent does global warming actually owe its to what extent does global warming actually owe its spread to man-made causes? That's it. That's where the debate is now. The debate isn't whether or not it's happening. The debate isn't how it's happening in many cases. The debate is to what extent humans are damaging the planet. However, the consensus is that we most fucking certainly are. So, that's just a tiny bit of food for thought. If he wants a citation that the damage is there and the damage is man-made, there's your citation. And if you want citation of the ecosystems collapsing, all you would need to do is a cursory study into how delicately balanced ecosystems are, and how easy it is for just a shift in temperature to completely annihilate an ecosystem and force a new one to develop in its place, or make it to where it is completely uninhabitable at that point. This is not a fight amongst those scientists, yet apparently David thinks that it is entirely a hoax. But, you know.
In this bit of melodramatic overacting, by the way, her father is an actor, you can see Greta kind of losing the emotion for a second in between sentences.
We are in the beginning of...
Because she's breathing. Because she had to fucking breathe. What the fuck do you expect, my dude? She lost her composure in the middle of her sentences. Yeah, you know what happens in the middle of sentences? Breathing. What the fucking hell?
A mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Well, this climate change alarmism sure did escalate fast. Recently, President Trump tweeted this sarcastic response to Greta's speech. She seems like a very happy young girl, looking forward to a bright and wonderful future, so...
Yeah, and that's because President Trump is a goddamn idiot who, instead of actually trying to talk about any particular issues, instead goes for ad hominem and insults. That's the only way that Trump actually knows how to communicate, especially on Twitter. If anybody's paid any amount of attention to President Trump's Twitter, then this is one of those things that we would consider self-evident. Like, it's not very hard to tell when looking at Trump's Twitter that most of what he does is either grandstand about how great of a person he is, how great the people who support him are, or insult people. And to be fair, let's be fair. That is what most people do on Twitter. Most people on Twitter do that exact thing. So, truthfully speaking, Trump is not a rare creature in that way. But at the exact same time, you do have to be cognizant of the fact that this person is leading the free world. So when he says shit like this about a child, it kind of leads you to have some issues. Oh, speaking of shit said about a child, there are a few tweets that we maybe need to look into regarding this. In fact, actually, let me see if I can't see here. Let me see if I can find it easily. This is not the tweet itself that caused me to have some issues. Where is it? I'm sure I can find it. Ian Miles Chong, for anybody who is not aware of who they are, made an interesting tweet, but I'm having trouble finding it. He may have gotten rid of it. Maybe he had like that one moment of introspection. No. I can't find the tweet. I know I responded to it, so if somebody can find the tweet for me, that would be awesome. But basically, the tweet in summation, and it wasn't just him who said a tweet like this, there were a few people who said a tweet like this, that said that if you're okay, if you think that we should be enacting public policies based on the words of a child, then you have no... What was the exact way he worded it? I don't want to straw man him. He did a good enough job sounding like an idiot on his own. Said, please make a video about Jason Cooley. I actually do not know who Jason Cooley is. Hold on. I'm gonna try not to actually straw man him. I'm gonna find the tweet. I swear I will do it. So Twitter advanced search, please help me. So we need to find advanced search from Ian? Or is that going to work? I'm trying to find it. I'm trying desperately to find this thing. I am sorry. Take, where is it? That's not it. That's not it either. It sucks because, like, I want to find this tweet because I don't want to misrepresent it. But at the same time... At the exact same time... Oh, hold on. You little fuckface. Nah, I'm not going to actually deal with that. I'm just going to screenshot that one. That's just an interesting one from 2 days ago. Hold on. Let's... Just for fun. Ocean says, check your Discord DMs. Sure thing. Oh, no, this one's from Justin Murphy. This isn't the one I was trying to find. But the one that I'm trying to find is from Ian Miles Strong. But they both said the same thing. I can use Justin Murphy's just as well. Also, Ocean, I have a thing to show you. One of our favorite people apparently decided to come out against me 2 days ago on Twitter because they're a wonderful person who actually doesn't understand jack shit about jack all. So can we all get something understood right now? I'm not going to talk about any particular names. This is random and tangential. But everybody here is aware that doxing has nothing to do with intent, right? It just so happens that in most cases, doxing is done for malicious intent, but doxing is revealing that information to the public that is not supposed to be public. Like, everybody's on the same page about that, right? We all understand this very basic thing about the internet. We all get that, right? This is very basic internet discourse, is that doxing, there's nothing about the definition of doxing that implies intent. The definition of doxing says that in most cases it is done with malicious intent, but that does not mean that doxing requires intent. This is really fucking easy to understand shit. Okay, cool. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Just thought I would throw that out there in case it ever becomes relevant again in the future. That my position on doxing is that intent is not part of the goddamn definition. All right. Now that we understand that, now that that is understood, again, just in case it comes up later, because it probably will, for reasons, I guess. Let's get to this tweet. And I guess you guys can't really see it terribly well because it's up there in the corner. But this is a tweet from Justin Murphy. Not even being provocative, but if you think Greta has the maturity to guide global policymaking, then you cannot object to Jeffrey Epstein paying 16-year-olds for sex. Can anybody in the chat figure out the difference, the fundamental difference, between a 16-year-old does not want the world to be on fire and a 16-year-old can consent to sex with an adult? Does everybody understand the difference between these two positions? I sincerely hope most of you can. I hope so. Also, David just donated $20 for Super Chat. Just an aside, how are you doing on Project Horizons? Like I said before, I have the first chapter done, and the thing that I took away from the chapter more so than anything was A, pit bucks, because we are in the Fallout universe for ponies, and 2, even more importantly, is that water poo recycled chips are a thing in this universe, and I don't know how I feel. I will continue into more of that universe when I've got the ability to. So, sorry I have not been able to get into more than the first chapter. But my big takeaway from that is still water poo recycled chips. Okay, anywho. So everybody in the chat is able to very easily... Hold on. Sending a thing to Gaelic because she's asking me a question about this. But everybody here is able to very easily understand, right? The difference between not wanting your world to be on fire and being able to consent to sex with an adult, right? That's a thing that we get. That's a thing that everybody here understands, at least on a base fundamental level. Okay, cool. Because if you do understand that, then you understand how much of a dumb tweet this is. And I recognize that me just saying the tweet is dumb is very dismissive. So allow me to go into why this tweet is dumb, because if I don't do that, then there's going to be somebody who says that I'm just dismissing it in a very call to an uprising fashion, just saying something's dumb and leaving it at that. So, the reason that these two are different, for everybody who does not understand, for whatever reason, not wanting your world to be on fire is not that different from not wanting your house to be on fire. This is the place you live. You eventually will be spending more of your time here. Anybody of any age can make the comment, I would prefer my house not be on fire. And we would accept that. We understand that there's nothing wrong with that statement. I do not wish to be currently burning alive. This is something that Christian evangelicals have actually taken advantage of, because that want to not be on fire is used to coerce children into accepting that they need to be saved so that they don't go to hell, right? Okay, cool. So we all get that. That's something that even a 4-year-old who understands what fire is, that fire's hot, and that it burns things, can understand. Now, this same 4-year-old cannot consent to sex. This goes very far up as well. There's a reason for this, because consent for something like that requires you to be able to be informed. You do not understand all the implications involved when you are young as opposed to when you are older. Also, on top of that, if you are younger, your consent, where sex is concerned, has another issue, and that is the issue of power dynamics. This tweet specifically references Jeffrey Epstein. There is a huge power dynamic problem involved there, where it's almost impossible to determine where the line for consent is because the power dynamic is so grossly shifted in the favor of Jeffrey Epstein. All right? Is this something that's news to anybody? The idea of power dynamics in relationships, that's not news to anybody, I hope. The idea that if you're younger, that influences where you stand on any scale of power dynamics, that's something that people understand as well, I would hope. These are pretty basic concepts. Concepts that are so basic that there are some things... I have one of them, and I actually use it in an upcoming video. There are some concepts that are so basic that statements like this are absolutely stupid.
Sure. So any involuntary imposition of will is an immoral action.
Okay, can you explain that in a little more simpler terms? So any what?
Forcing someone to do something they don't consent to is immoral.
Okay, and how do you know that that's immoral?
Moral intuition and moral progress.
Okay, whose moral intuition? I don't have a moral intuition that that's true. So.
Is everybody in the chat, please, give me an H in the chat if you get why the statement, I don't have a moral intuition that rape is wrong, is a problem. If you understand why that's a problem, please give me an H in the chat. Please. I figured this should not be a debatable thing, but apparently this is a thing that we... I have this clip for reasons. Cupcakey reasons. Real Lock in the chat says that that's scary. Real Lock, remember, not only is that a scary thing, but I actually happen to have a debate on my channel with the person here who just pointed out that they don't have a moral intuition that rape is wrong. I have a debate on my channel with that guy. So, okay. Oh, and Ocean has sent me... Oh, fucking Ian Miles Strong. That is not the... Ocean sent me a thing on Ian Miles Strong, but it's not the one that I was wanting to respond to. The one that I was wanting to respond to was in the same vein as the Justin Murphy one. Real Lock. Yeah, that is... The issue... The issue is not what he does or doesn't believe. The issue is what he says, because as a somewhat public figure... If you're a pastor of any variety, you're a public figure because you're a figure for the public. That's just how that works. If you're a public figure of any variety, what matters less sometimes is what you believe, and more so the consequences of the things that you say. Now, there is a measure of intent that is important, because your intent is going to determine how we read into anything that you say. But if your epistemology is one that makes you say stupid shit like, I can't justify against rape, then your epistemology needs to be thrown in the fucking garbage. If your epistemology makes you say things that are antithetical to your moral position, your epistemology needs to be thrown into the garbage. That's how that works. Just gonna throw that out there. That is a stance that I am willing to stay behind. So, continuing on with this sociopath epistemology for the win promotion. All right, continuing on with this lovely take from Computing Forever.
So nice to see. And lots of people read about that because they consider Greta to be a hero now. Well, I'm going to move on to an article over on information liberation. Thunberg, who is on the autism spectrum, is the daughter of Swedish actor Svante Thunberg and his TV host wife Malena Ernman. She clearly caught the acting bug from her parents.
Okay, and? So, first of all, acting, anybody who is an actor can tell you that a good portion of acting is actually showing legitimate emotions. It's bringing up. This is one of the reasons why, like, sometimes when you're trying to act out a scene that is particularly emotionally driven, a lot of actors sometimes have a problem getting those scenes to work because there's a first knee-jerk inclination that, okay, I need to go ahead and fabricate my persona for this scene. However, what a lot of actors do, what most really good actors do, is they will pull legitimate emotions from their past and use those to create that persona, which means the emotions are 100% legitimate. These are just emotions that are being assigned to a different action. So, for instance, a lot of times if you look at interviews with actors and they say, well, how did you perform this scene? Oh, well, I just brought myself back to insert traumatic event here, and that put me in the mindset for this. Also, to discount somebody's emotions based on them being an actor is to make the nightmarishly stupid take that, as was just said by Rico in the chat, actors can't be activists, apparently, based on the merit of them being actors. And you know what? If we were to accept that take, which I'm not willing to accept that take, but if we were to accept that take for any reason, then we would then have to also accept that there are other people who should not be allowed to be activists as well. Say, preachers, but I'm sure that Computing Forever, being the Catholic apologist that he is, would not like that. Oh, that's fun. I think I'm going to die here now. No, I think I actually might be able to survive. I'll just fear you real quick. Oh. My offhand hit him. I guess I die. Yep, no way around that. Alright, continuing on.
I really do feel sorry for this girl. Imagine being so misled by all of this climate change alarmism, being deceived into believing that the planet is dying, that you're filled with this level of anxiety and fear for the future.
Not dying, that is not what climate change argues. Climate change does not say anything about the planet dying. What it argues is that the planet will get to a point where it is ecologically unable to support us. Us. Humans. The people who need to actually survive on this planet in order to continue doing all the things that David liked. There wouldn't be a Catholicism without humans, my guy. Also, this is all just a giant... First of all, this is a giant genetic fallacy. For anybody who doesn't understand what a genetic fallacy is, it is dismissing an argument based on its source. if we dismiss the argument based on its source, say, oh, it's a 16-year-old girl who's arguing this thing, so let's go ahead and dismiss the argument. Hey, she probably learned acting from her parents, maybe. Let's go ahead and dismiss it. Also, the article that he's pointing out labeled her as autistic. I don't know if she's autistic, but I don't know what that has to say good or bad about her argument. So I don't know why that's brought up in the thing that he put out anyway. So, also, we had a super chat that just came in, the Real Lock, for the AWA fund, you weeb. Thank you very much for that, Real Lock. I'm going to have to actually do a thing for the AWA fund at some point. But not yet.
Future. On Twitter, Henrik Palmgren of Red Ice said, on behalf of Swedes...
Red Ice. From Red Ice. That, you know what? I just pointed out that there's a genetic fallacy, and because of that, we actually can't argue things based off their source. But if your source is Red Ice TV, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now. That already throws my thoughts on your position into a bin somewhere very far away. Zalrog just donated $5. I never say, Dave, go after the Catholic Church for child rape. Also, she has Asperger's, so yeah. Darth Killer says, can you please explain the difference between a genetic fallacy and circumstantial ad hominem fallacy? Sure thing. So an ad hominem fallacy of any kind is dismissing an argument based on an insult. So, for instance, and this is why ad homs and insults get confused with one another so often. A good difference between ad hom and insult. An insult is, you're stupid, I don't believe you. An ad hom is, you're stupid, so I don't believe you. If you don't believe somebody because you perceive them as stupid, you're committing an ad hominem. An ad hominem is a subcategory of a genetic fallacy. If memory serves, I could be wrong on that. Genetic fallacy is basing something against its source. The easy counter to both of these is that a broken clock is wrong 10 times out of 12. But there's 2 times where the broken clock is usually right, or 10 times out of 22 times out of 24, a broken clock is wrong. But there are 2 times out of that the broken clock is still right. Jag and Quill says, are you actually going to Anime Atlanta? If I can get the funding to get me, Aaron, and Raz all to Anime Weekend Atlanta, then we will be at Anime Weekend Atlanta. Circumstantial ad hominem is where you are dismissing it, like say, let me make sure that I've got this right. Circumstantial ad hominem. Circumstantial ad hominem occurs when someone attacks a claim by saying that the person making the claim is only making it because it is in her best... Okay, so circumstantial ad hominem, as opposed to regular ad hominem, which is usually about insults, circumstantial ad hominem is saying that you're making a claim because it's in your best interest to make that claim. So, for instance, this is an issue we have with... let's take video games as a good example. There are people whose channels are based entirely on Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo. So to say that something that a Nintendo apologist, as an example, something that they're saying is wrong because they're a Nintendo apologist and that's what their channel's built around, you can't say that the thing that they're saying could be right or wrong independent on whether or not it is beneficial for them to make that claim. It can be both beneficial for me to make a claim and it be true. So, circumstantial ad hom is about ad hominem relating not to insult, but to the circumstances around the reasoning behind why somebody would be saying a particular thing. So hopefully that cleared that up. Do you pronounce it AWA or AWA? I pronounce it both ways depending on the conversation that I'm having at the time. Also, the fun thing about the broken clock is right twice a day. Broken clock is right twice a day unless it's military time. Do we have any other super chats I need to get into there real quick? No. I am good on that. Jack and Quill says, if I wasn't broke at the moment, I'd help out, but but I am for now, so later. Also, I'll see you there. Well, I'd be very happy to see you there, Jack. It was fun seeing you at Faithless Forum, and I'll definitely be happy to see you at Anime Weekend Atlanta if we are able to be there. Any also has it right in the chat. Ad hom circumstantial is often preceded by, you're only saying that because you're X. So, for instance, if I were to say that you're only saying that because you're Christian, well, you may be saying that Christianity is the savior of the Western civilization. You may be saying that because you're Christian, or you may be saying that because you legitimately believe it, and as a result, you're Christian. It could go either way. It's almost always better to attack that argument itself, not attack the reasoning why somebody may or may not be saying the argument. Not to mention, I have plenty of friends who have Asperger's, and many of them have actually helped me build this channel, and I rely on them. So, just dismissing somebody because they have anything on the autism spectrum confuses me.
I apologize for Greta Thunberg. She does not represent us. I disavow her climate alarmism that's sucking kids into an apocalyptic cult. She's being used in a PR campaign.
An apocalyptic cult. An apocalyptic cult. Hold up a minute. Hold up. I have a question. So, let's think about things that we would label apocalyptic cults. Would we label science an apocalyptic cult merely because we happen to see through the lens of science that the world may or may not be habitable at a certain point, and it may or may not be our fault in some way? Do we... I think I die here, right? Yes, I do. These things have bleed, so I can't just fear them away and then bandage myself. I don't have that ability because I'm bleeding. But to label the use of science to predict whether or not the Earth will be habitable by humans, at least in the vast majority, as an apocalyptic cult, one, muddies the definition very far down about what we actually would perceive as a cult. I would prefer to use Stephen Hassan's bite model to determine what is or is not a cult. And actually, if you guys want to see me talk on that, I have an episode that I helped out with on the In Time podcast where me, Asgar Odinson, Nicholas Suter, and others get into the conversation of what makes a cult, what do we use to determine whether or not a cult exists, are cults harmful, in what ways are they harmful? All of those questions and more are answered on that podcast. I also pointed out that Telltale was probably the better person for that podcast than me, but apparently I was brought on anyway, so I did the best I could with what I had. Things I would label an apocalyptic death cult. Probably not science, just science in its application. Probably would not call that an apocalyptic death cult. Things I would call an apocalyptic death cult. Let's see here. Probably certain forms of Christianity. I mean, it is... Christianity in and of itself is not a cult, but there are many cults that are Christian-based. Pentecostals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, Seventh-day Adventists, fucking Russian Orthodoxy. All of these are cults that are based in Christianity. And many of these cults have a lot of their narrative based on post-apocalyptia. What do you do when the apocalypse happens? This is why the Jehovah's Witnesses have the bunker stories. That entire video series is based around being in post-apocalyptia as a Jehovah's Witness. I just figured out why my attacks have been doing less damage. I've been using the dagger in my main hand, and not the sword. I've made several mistakes. Okay. Well, now that I've fixed that mistake that I was making, except for the mistake my mom made, that mistake is still here and speaking on camera to you right now. But we also have a $5 super chat from Gaelic Knox. My little sister has Asperger's, and I'm autistic. Does that mean now that everything we say is invalid? Yes, Gaelic Knox, everything you say is invalid. Every single thing. All of it. Gone. Out the window. You're also not a professional artist, apparently, according to some people. Just Yeah. I'm joking, by the way. For those who are unaware, there's inside jokes there, and I'm joking.
Called We Don't Have Time, started by Al Gore's business partner Ingmar Renshag. The Twitter.
So, what's funny about the Al Gore thing, right, is that Al Gore made a movie called An Inconvenient Truth, and that movie has been the butt of several climate denialist jokes. Whether or not that shitty movie, oh my god, there are so many fucking shadow bolts. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, I guess we're not doing that. Anywho. Anywho. What was I saying? Okay, so the mere fact that there is a movie that Al Gore made called An Inconvenient Truth, and Al Gore happened to be one of the people who initially started talking about global warming, at least in the public eye, does not discount anything. Also, even if Al Gore were to profit off of any preparations that people were to make, even if there are profits to be made there, if he were to profit off of any of those preparations, that doesn't mean that the preparations don't need to be made in the first place. That's like saying that, and here, catch me if you heard this one before, if somebody profits off of a vaccine being made, then the vaccine isn't necessary. Ignoring the fact that the vaccine market isn't terribly effective at like gaining profits, pennies are made off of vaccines. They're not the most profitable thing on the planet. But ignoring all of that, let's pretend for a moment that vaccines were one of the most milked and profitable franchises of all time. That would not suddenly alleviate the need for vaccines, okay? Your tinfoil hat is not automatically more important than getting rid of polio.
Twitter account Wide Awake Q Army Swiss Division shared the following. Her handler. On the photos behind her, you see Louisa Marie Neubauer, her handler. She's a member of One Foundation, managed by Bono, Bill Gates, and George Soros. Just a reminder of the...
Oh, of course, this is all going to boil back to George Soros. Do you know how many comments I have on my channel claiming that have levied threats to me? Not threats, but accusations to me of being funded by George Soros. This seems to be the default. This is like the they have only one joke of this whole fucking shtick. Before I get into that, Gaelic Knox for $5 says, fun game. Every time Cirrus dies, take a shot of water. Stay hydrated. Oh, boy. So, this is the default joke. This is the default meme whenever you're dealing with any type of possible conspiracy on the other end. It is, oh, they're being funded by George Soros. They're being funded by George Soros. This is not unlike the fact that the right wing only has one joke when it comes to gender. Ha ha, I guess I'll just identify as an Apache helicopter. Ha ha, and then everybody clapped. Everybody that's totally not an NPC at all in this narrative. Definitely not NPCs that only have one joke to share amongst each other, much like NPCs would. Like, it's very frustrating to me, especially because many of these situations also seem to have the same fundamental issue. And that's that joke becomes an immediate dismissal that everybody can latch on to, right? Anywho.
One Foundation, because I did talk about them before. This is a clip from a video of one co-founder, Jamie Drummond, speaking to the Joint Committee on Foreign Affairs and Trade and Defence last year in Ireland.
As Africa's population doubles, a lot of them, whatever the circumstances, will be coming to Europe. As economic migrants or as refugees, they will be coming. Many of them. And that is a good thing if they come in to a place that has an open mind and whose economies are doing well. Because we will be senile will be senescent demographically. We will need their youthful energy to do stuff.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly reasonable take. The actual replacement metric for breeding is 2.2. And if your localized population cannot maintain a 2.2 replacement rate, then it inevitably will die out. Because that's why it's called the replacement rate. This is the rate you need to actually replace your population. If you cannot maintain replacement rate, then you inevitably will require immigration in order to actually sustain your population. This obvious thing has led to a bunch of conspiracy theorists to believe in something called the Great Replacement. Lauren Southern is primarily responsible for the propagation of this thing. The Great Replacement myth is that they're trying to breed white people out, and so in order to do so, they bring more brown people in. That is a very shortened version of the Great Replacement theory. I hate using the word theory because it assumes that there's even like a modicum of scientific backing to it. There's not. Replacement statistics do not lend themselves to a Great Replacement myth. So what he's saying here is just that, hey, there's a reality that we face. We are not breeding at replacement levels. We will need immigration to fix that so that we can still maintain a stable population. There is higher birth rates in other parts of the country, and because there are higher birth rates in those parts of the country, or those parts of the world, they may or may not migrate to our country, and them migrating to our country is not necessarily a bad thing, because migrating to our country means that we will be able to have a population maintain. This is basic. This is basic, like looking at data and understanding the end results of it. However, I would like to point out that looking at data and understanding the end results of what that data actually means is not a strong suit of people like this. If it were, they wouldn't be climate change denialists.
So that's just what the economic statistics tell you, and the demographic data demands. And demography is destiny. Europe and Africa are going to have a very close 21st century.
We will apparently need their youthful energy to do stuff because we'll all be senile and senescent demographically, and demography is destiny. Well, why aren't Western peoples in Western nations being encouraged to have more children? It's almost like there's some kind of population replacement agenda being pushed.
What the fuck did I just say? What the fuck did I just say? I haven't watched this video yet. I haven't. I selected it from video suggestions, and here we are. Here we are. I didn't do anything. And yet, here we are. There it is. Darth Killer for the $5. At Cirrus. Tinfoil. Also, do use theory, just precise. It's colloquial theory, and you're fine. Colloquial theory equals scientific or philosophical hypothesis. No, I understand that. The thing is, though, is that there are creationists who don't understand that, and I argue with them fairly regularly.
Dave, come on. That's just a conspiracy theory, and you know it. It's not like the UN has a website that has a page about replacement migration. Is it a solution to declining and aging populations? Oh crap, it does.
Yeah, because that's what happens when you take a cursory glance at the data and understand what the end result of that data is. A cursory glance at the data says that we are currently not breeding at a rate to replace population, but other places in the world are, which means there's not actually a crisis. See, here's the other reason why this crisis isn't looked at with the answer of, hey, Americans need to breed more. One, there's nothing about being American or being white that makes your blood any better than anyone else's. And if you think there is, shut the fuck up and unsubscribe. I will say it right now. If you think that being white makes you better than anybody for any particular reason, unsubscribe right now, you piece of human garbage. And I say that with a smile on my face. And I say it for a reason. Because I wholeheartedly believe that if you think that your race, whatever it may be, makes you superior to anyone, unsubscribe, you piece of human garbage. I'm fine standing by that. 110%. No issue with that. So, again, because we know that one of the things that is actually leading to population, or one of the things that is leading to global warming is the increase in human population. Why is there an increase in human population? Well, that's just what happens when you have populations that are not curtailed. Now, how would you curtail population? Well, you fucking shouldn't. Because you don't want to tell somebody, hey, you can't have kids. You also don't want to tell somebody, hey, you should not... How do you tell a population that it should not continue to propagate? That slides you into eugenics really, really quickly and really uncontrollably. You don't want to do that. So what's the better solution? The better solution is to not try to force populations to do one thing or another. Just accept the fact that the data is what it is. I just feared you. I love lag. I use the fear and then the punch comes. My favorite. Anywho, because population data does show us that this is the current rate, the answer to that rate would be, if we saw that the Earth's population level was declining to a point where civilization could not maintain itself, then the answer would probably be, hey, everybody, have more babies. But that's not what we see. What we see is that the Earth's population level is perfectly fine, if not a little out of control. As a result, the answer is not telling people to make more babies, because that will just speed up the fucking climate change process. I know that he's denying that, but I kind of don't care that he's denying that. Doesn't really mean too much to me that he's denying that in any way, shape, or form. Well, it does. I actually do care that he's denying that, but it doesn't bother me for the sake of my argument. Because we know that those increase in populations will actually lead to an increase in climate change. Why does it lead to an increase in climate change? Well, what things do we do that lead to the most carbon emissions? We have increased use of automobiles. We have increased use of factories. We have increased use in agriculture. All of these things have some level of carbon footprint. And because these things have a level of carbon footprint, the more we have to utilize these things, and the amount we utilize these things is based entirely on the population that requires the goods that come from these things, we inevitably will have a larger carbon footprint from these things. Pretty common sense, standard thing, doesn't require a whole lot of thought process. You would almost say intuitive. But Boyo over here thinks that none of that is real. Thinks that none of that is real, none of it's an issue. We don't need to worry about it at all. But we kind of do. A lot of these conspiracies also end up falling back on something. If you guys are familiar with the Georgia Guidestones, that say that a sustainable and controllable amount of the population would be 50,000. This is a old conspiracy theory, but it is one that a lot of this stuff leverages on because it uses the same rhetoric and tactics. Doesn't necessarily mean anything major, just means that it's there. Also, I saw the Patreon thing, the extra $1 that you just sent in via Patreon, but I do not see an unread message from Patreon at all. So if you can send that message via Discord or some other method, but I don't see it in Patreon specifically. Okay, continuing on.
Weird. Well, apparently Greta Thunberg filed a suit against 5 countries for climate inaction without including China. That was an article over on redstate.com. I'll include that linked below in the description, along with all of the other sources. China, of course, being the world's biggest polluter. Interesting. Anyway, check this out.
So, why would she not file that suit against China? Well, let's see here. Why did... Let's take a look. So, she accused 5 countries of inaction. 5 of them. Argentina, Brazil, France, Germany, and Turkey. Specifically. Why didn't she file suit against the United States? Why didn't she file suit against any other industrialized nation? Probably because China, much like the United States, would have no problem fighting that fucking thing. What if you filed a suit against the United States, what do you think would fucking happen? Especially with Trump as the leader of the states. You wouldn't fucking get anywhere. She literally... Also, Darth Killer, China hasn't signed any climate accords. What do you know? It's almost like there's a reason behind this if you took even a cursory glance at the data. What a fucking weird thing. Blue Soul Jim says, sorry, I sent to the community section. Okay, I'll take a look in just a second. Nervardia says, here, have money, take it, throws money pathetically. Thank you very much for that, Nervardia. Realox says, I don't know, maybe because authoritarian countries don't care about your activism. Oof. Gainer, little kid filed a fake lawsuit against me. Sad. Ethan Go says, your rant is great, but you're kind of ignoring Super Chat. Sorry if that's rude. I just think you should go back in your history. Are there Super Chats that I've ignored? Hold on. Oh, Heathen Ghost. Aha, I see it. $10. Hey, Cirrus, I was hoping I could interview you for an interview. I talked to you in DMs, but you didn't respond when I asked about the interview. I know you're busy, but it would be really helpful. Thank you. Let me take a look. Heathen Ghost, are you also Ghost of the Stars? Because if that's the case, that's one of the ones that's been in my backlog I haven't gotten a chance to look at. But I will get with you after this stream. Ah, why? Everything's messed up. Everything screws up on the thing. There we go. Okay.
My name is Rosie Clemens Cope. I'm 11 years old. We are here because our parents trashed the planet, and it's up to our generation to save it.
My future is in jeopardy. All of our futures are in jeopardy.
Baby boomers, all these people call us Generation Z, the last letter of the alphabet, because we are going to be the last generation to survive.
We have only 11 years to rectify decades of damage that we have inflicted on our planet, and only 18 months until some damages are irreversible.
And I am only 16 years old. I am here to speak for the trees. I'd like to acknowledge my privilege and my background.
I am here for the...
Is that the... Did they literally just want to only show that part so she could say I acknowledge my privilege and then move on? Why?
People who are suffering and dying because of our country's decision.
And we are not here to talk about our sacrifices and our doom and gloom and not existing. We are here to create. We do not have time to be polite. This is a revolution. We are creating this movement every day because every day of inaction drives more action from us.
We have been polluting the earth for years, and we might actually die in a few years. Our world is already in flames. It's getting hotter. We can't breathe.
Unlike so many people my age, I feel really visceral anxiety about climate change.
It doesn't matter how much we're taxed if we don't have an earth to live on.
Credit goes to Grabian for putting that montage together.
Oh. So that montage was actually put together by somebody who fucking Computing Forever wants to credit. Excellent. Wonderful. Glad to know that that's not actually how it was edited back in the cutting room floor. Oh, boy. Okay, so this seems like taking... one, you're taking the rhetoric of children, and you're trying to argue against the rhetoric of children. First of all, just want to throw that out there. So when you say, oh, look, her composure slipped in a thing. Well, yeah, composure slips all the time, even with adults. What the fuck do you expect? Two, when you're taking a cherry-picked look at that, the information that you get out of that is going to be based on that cherry-picked data. So, let's take a look at what his response is.
I find this very disturbing. Young people who've been brainwashed into believing that they have no future so long as human climate change / global warming continues. And so they're basically...
I mean, it's a question. Let's say you live in a rural area, an area that is already incredibly hot, but goes up about 10 more degrees to the point where much of the ecosystem there is irreversibly damaged. Let's say you live there, right? Your world, you may not have the funding, living in that area, to move anywhere else. Your future is dependent entirely on your local ecosystem. If that local ecosystem fails, then your ability to sustain yourself goes out the window. Now, I can't say whether or not some of those kids live in an area like that, or if there are any children in the world that live in an area like that, but I'm willing to bet there's at least one, just at least one, that lives in an area that would be 110% reverse, or would be damaged by global warming. If you're in one of those areas where the ecosystem would be damaged, then it may actually be true for you that, hey, you as a person don't actually have a future, especially if your future is landlocked in that area. You can't just do the wonderful Ben Shapiro take of, hey, just sell your house and leave. That's not a thing that most people have the ability to do. So ultimately we find ourselves in a situation where even if Computing Forever wants to say that, no, they still have futures, the Earth will still be twirling around. Yes, the Earth may be twirling around, but their localized zone that has been irrevocably damaged and irreversibly destroyed, they don't have a future. They don't have that ability to. This is what happens when you survive entirely on an individualistic basis, instead of understanding that you as a human being are part of a collective society. And if you don't think you're part of a collective society functionally, then by all means go do whatever the fuck you want outside and wait until the cops grab you and show you exactly what happens when society deems your actions to be poor. You may functionally believe that you're an individual, and it's true in many regards that you are an individual with your own autonomy, but you're still part of the society. It sucks, it blows, but you can't exactly just leave this planet.
Being used by leftists who want more political control, and of course they also want to increase taxes. That's what all of this is ultimately about.
Okay, so leftists wanting to increase taxes. Well, what is the purpose of taxes, and what can you do with taxes? Well, let's take a quick look through the things that taxes actually do support. Now, there is a decent chunk of taxes that go towards politicians, just to their paychecks. That's a problem. I honestly think that politicians should be paid about the same as teachers, and that teachers should be paid more. That's just my thought. The people who influence the country and the people who influence the people who will ultimately be influencing the country, I feel like those are the two people that should be paid significantly more by our social money. It's just me. So when somebody says something like taxation is theft, okay, cool. Let's go ahead and grant that it's theft. Let's grant that it's evil. But let's look at the things that it does. Well, we know that it funds infrastructure. I'm okay with that. I like having roads. I don't want to depend on a grant from random fucking CEOs that may or may not give two flying fucks about those roads to actually fund them. especially if you're in a rural area where the market doesn't exactly have any incentive for you to do that. So we know that infrastructure such as roads is taken care of by that. We know that infrastructure such as, if you're living in a functional first world country, healthcare is taken over by that. I'm perfectly fine with all of that. I'm fine with my taxes being paid into that. Even if YouTubers have to pay double tax, which kind of blows, but whatever. You still have to pay it. It may suck, but it allows the society that you, again, are collectively a part of to function. There's nothing wrong with that. If you want to remove taxes, I'm fine with you removing a lot of taxes on poor people who rely on those social programs. Go ahead. But don't remove it from people who will not be impacted by it. If you... For instance, most people who are in my financial situation are in what's called a 12% tax bracket. I'm technically in a 24% tax bracket because that's just the way the 1099 miscellaneous document works. I don't want to get into all the fun shit that goes into filing as an independent creator. But taxes are fun. They're fun. I'm using fun very liberally. But most people in the U.S. are going to find themselves in the 12 to 24 tax bracket, somewhere in there. But if you happen to be making several $billion, I don't see any issue with giving you a 50% tax, 70%. Hell, in the 50s, we had a fucking 90% tax. I don't see a problem with that, because ultimately, they will make as much money in a week as I make in a year. And I survive. They can too. They'll be fine. That's just me. Also, for everybody that wants to fight for the uber rich to not get taxed more, every single one of you, not a single fucking one of you will ever be affected by that tax. Not one. Thought y'all were fucking individuals. Why are you fighting for collective taxi things? Seems weird. Inconsistent almost. Okay, continuing on.
Power. And the youth are incredibly impressionable and easy to manipulate, hence all of the climate change propaganda being brought into schools these days.
It is almost as if... Okay, so, let's go ahead and take that argument and throw it on its head. Let's go ahead and take that complete narrative and let's throw it on its head. Why would we educate children on anything? They're too impressionable. They shouldn't be educated on anything whatsoever. You should wait until they're an adult and they can think for themselves to educate them on anything, lest they be propagandized against. Let's ignore the fact that we have history classes here in the United States that literally whitewash all of history and teach mythological versions of the founding fathers. Let's go ahead and forget that. Most people don't find out that Christopher Columbus was like a fucking serial rapist until until they're adults. This is not shit that people, understand until way later into their life. We literally sell propagandized mythological versions of this country's history. Realox says, I think you missed my super chat. Also, people act like they're talking about taxing the middle class out of existence. Okay, let's see. Where is the super chat that I missed? Okay, Realox says, for $5, fun climate change things I learned a few months ago. France is losing wine country, and England is gaining wine country because of climate change. Huh, what a weird, strange coincidence. What a strange thing. Wait, Nightshade, you didn't know that? Christopher Columbus was a very sordid fellow. Let's see here. So, first of all, Columbus kidnapped a Carib woman and gave her to a crew member to rape. This is from a quote from Michael Del Cuno, who participated in Columbus's second expedition to the Americas. It's in page 143 of Bergeen. While I was on the boat, I captured a very beautiful woman whom the Lord Admiral Columbus gave to me. When I had taken her to my cabin, she was naked, as was their custom. I was filled with a desire to take my pleasure with her, and attempted to satisfy my desire. She was unwilling, and so treated me with her nails that I wished I had never begun. I then took a piece of rope and whipped her soundly, and she let forth such an incredible scream that you would not have believed your ears. Eventually we came to such terms, I assure you, that you would have thought she had been brought up in a school for whores. Okay. Let's see here. Columbus also kidnapped and enslaved more than 1,000 people in Hispaniola. Columbus forced Indians to collect gold for him, or else they would die. About 50,000 Indians committed mass suicide rather than comply with the Spanish under Christopher Columbus's purview. 56 years after his first voyage, only 500 of the 300,000 Indians remained in Hispaniola because of his influence. He was also horrible to the Spanish under his rule. Settlers under Christopher Columbus sold 9- and 10-year-old girls into sexual slavery. This is one that he admitted himself in a letter to Dona Jeanna, I cannot speak French, de la Tour, a friend of the Spanish Queen. There are plenty of dealers who go about looking for girls. Those from 9 to 10 are now in demand, and for all ages a good price must be paid. We literally sell the myth that this person was a wonderful person who sailed the ocean blue and came to the Americas and made peace with the natives and all this other fucking dumb junk. That's literally propaganda that we sell kids because it is easier for them to stomach than the truth of who Christopher Columbus was. So Nightshade, I'm assuming this is the first time that you've actually heard of the exploits of Christopher Columbus in full. This is the first time that you've actually gone through that. Yeah, Christian homeschooling, never heard anything bad about him. Of course you didn't. No, seriously, take some time, take a day, do a little bit of research into Christopher Columbus, by all means, and after you've done some of that, just hop onto the Discord and send me a message and let me know what you found with your homework, because dude was a fucking horrible guy. He really and truly was. So, okay, there was a thing on Patreon that I needed to look at. Let me see if I can finally find it this time. No? I don't see it in Patreon at all. Is it here in notifications? No, I don't see any messages from Joseph as Robin. Maybe I'm just horrible at navigating Patreon, but I checked again after giving it plenty of time to update. Benji says, I loved this guy in kindergarten through second grade. Well, yeah, that's because, again, we sell a propagandized version of Christopher Columbus in history so that people can see there's a foundational myth that every country has. No country has a white record. No country has a clean slate in its founding. Every country, in some form or fashion, was conquered in some bloody way in its current form that led into the countries we know of today. However, the history that we sell children is usually going to gloss over some of the more bloody details. Nightshade, what about the myth that Columbus proved the world was round? Were you taught that one? Yeah, that's one that we hear a lot as well. So Columbus had nothing to do with us understanding that the Earth was round. The Earth being round was a well-understood concept because the Greeks did that math hundreds of years before Columbus was even a thought of a drop on his dad's penis. The Greeks proved that ages ago. So, no, again, the myth that Columbus proved the Earth was round is just that, a myth. Emmett says, good example. New Zealand schools, we were taught that Captain Cook was amazing and wonderful. In fact, he was a rapist and a mass murderer. Welcome to history, everybody!
I think the most important line I took away from that was the last one, with the girl saying that it doesn't matter how much we're taxed if we don't have a planet to live on.
Is that what that line was?
To live on. Really visceral anxiety about climate change.
It doesn't matter how much we're taxed if we don't have an Earth to live on.
Credit goes to Grabe.
Okay, so what I take from that is that it doesn't matter how much we're taxed if we're dead. Because if you're taxed 1,000% of your paycheck, it doesn't matter because you're dead. That's how I read that. I didn't read it as, I want to be taxed more, because it doesn't matter as long as the Earth's not on fire. Again, not how I read that. Have I been propagandized into believing that Peter Pan is a good guy too? Yes, actually. Look at the earlier versions of Peter Pan, and you tell me if you would consider that person a good person. From what I remember, Peter Pan was more of a serial child abductor in the story than the mythological Captain Hook fighting hero that we know from the Disney tale. Just throwing that out there. Sorry. All of Disney, to ruin all of your childhoods, all of the stories that Disney bases its fairy tales off of are really nightmarishly fucked up. Peter Pan originally debuted as an infant in The Little White Bird, a novel written by J.M. Barrie for adults in 1902. He's only prominent in a few chapters. But let's see here. This is now becoming the let's ruin everybody's childhood's power hour. Right? The darkness of Barrie's Peter Pan is tempered by an equally important quality, his childishness. The Peter in The Little White Bird and Peter and Wendy is among the most honest depictions of a literary child I've ever read. He is selfish, devoted to his own entertainment except in battle scenes, incapable of taking care of himself. He also loves like a child without enough thought into the effect his love has or what it means if he forgets it or what it will mean if he forgets for a while. Walt Disney excised him of his more sinister traits. By making the character a young teen instead of an infant, Disney synced him up with the cultural standards of the time. Disney's Peter Pan is well in line with the exceptions for an American child in the 1950s. Let's see. What... Peter Pan's, the version that Barrie makes for Peter Pan is quite darker. Barrie's original draft depicts Pan as a villain kidnapping children from their beds. Captain Hook was only added later as a theatrical device to distract the audience while stagehands changed the scenery. To die would be an awfully big adventure, says Peter Pan, one of the novel's most infinite lines, a sentiment coming from a child that is incredibly ghoulish. So, the villain of the story was originally made as a distraction for the audience while the stagehands changed to the more important bits of the play that involved Peter kidnapping children. Let's ruin everyone's childhood power hour. Woo! So yeah, that's fun stuff for everybody. Pikachu says, I need some water after this. I'm sorry to ruin, like, so many people's childhoods today, but the original Little Mermaid has her dying on shore and turning to sea foam after getting her legs. True. The original Cinderella actually has the stepsisters getting their eyes pecked out by crows, and has the various members of the court literally slicing off the ends of their feet in a desperate attempt to get them to slip into the glass slippers. And the prince almost marries one of the stepsisters. The only reason that he doesn't is she starts slipping on her own blood that is leaking from her feet from the glass slippers. And it is in her showing her own blood that he realizes that he's been duped. Fucking childhood stories are not child-friendly. And if you think they are, a cursory glance at history will show you that they are absolutely awful. You're right, it is the sister. I said various members of the courts, but no, it was the sister that attempted that. So yay.
For putting that montage together. I find this very disturbing. Young people who've been brainwashed into believing that they have no future so long as human climate change / global warming continues. And so they're basically being used by leftists who want more political control, and of course they also want to increase taxes. That's what all of this is ultimately about, power. And the youth are incredibly impressionable and easy to manipulate, hence all of the climate change propaganda being brought into schools these days. I think the most important line I took away from that was the last one, with the girl saying that it doesn't matter how much we're taxed if we don't have a planet to live on. That's really what all of this ultimately boils down to, turning us all into impoverished, indebted, taxable units for...
My dude, my guy, impoverished units? Your argument, ironically, isn't against tax. It isn't against taxes, because most societies have recognized that taxation is not a problem. Taxation is not a true evil. Taxation without representation, that's a problem, because your taxation means that you are able to be represented by representatives in political offices. That is one of the things that your taxation buys, outside of, fucking infrastructure. No, your issue is not... Your issue with impoverished units being exploited... You would be better served fighting capitalism. Or at least, at the very least, fighting the very, what's it called? My brain is having a blank right now. Free market capitalism that is not actually curtailed by any socialistic policies, like, welfare. A system that does not have any of those socialist tendencies that actually allow your impoverished units to have an ability to support themselves. You would be better off fighting to increase those policies that, by the way, are paid for by taxes. Just so you know. Just so everyone's aware. Just so everyone's aware. Those social policies that allow the people who otherwise would not be able to support themselves and would be these indebted taxable units, the systems that allow them to actually survive are paid for by taxes. Weird, right?
For the mega wealthy globalists. Also, come back to me when you've actually worked quite a bit before you say something like, it doesn't matter how much we're taxed. Because being in the workforce for a few years, it's the fastest way to realize that taxation is pretty crippling and even demoralizing. Some might say it's even theft.
That fucking face.
Even demoralizing. Some might say it's even theft.
That face. That fucking face. Now, taxation, I can grant it as being theft, but it is theft that you actually trade off for certain things. You don't really have much of a choice in whether or not you're taxed, but again, there are things that you actually gain as a result of that. 1, you gain infrastructure. 2, you gain representation. 3, you gain parts of that infrastructure that are incredibly important, like education. So, also, he talks about being in the workforce, and that being one of the things that tells you exactly how much taxation is theft. So being in the workforce and being in the minimum wage workforce specifically, which is a thing that I've done for years, and I'm currently making less than minimum with my channel, but, you know, who am I to count? It's one thing that I'm very well acquainted with. I'm perfectly well acquainted with not making a lot of money and having that money being taxed. Here's an awkward thing that happens, though. Most people do not actually see any of the taxes that get taken out of their check. They are largely unaffected by them. If somebody's making $800 a month, the 10% that gets taken out via taxes that would have made them have $885-ish at the end, while yes, that's an important amount of money that they would have needed otherwise, it does pay for their roads. It does pay for them to have education that is not in the private sector. And if you've ever actually had to pay for private education, believe me, it's a lot more than the $85 that got taxed out of your paycheck. This is coming from somebody who actually had a mother who wanted to raise me in a private education sector, and that led to a lot of crippling inadequacies where money was concerned. So, just throwing it out there, there are some things that you don't want handled in private sector. And taxation allows you to have those things in the public sector instead.
The historical record makes it clear that people are often stupidly willing to sacrifice their freedom for security. But in this case, the argument is that we should sacrifice more of our financial freedom for our survival. Anyway, as Tucker Carlson points out...
Alright, we're going to do a thing here. This is a fun thing. I happened to go to McDonald's today. So I have a prop in the form of a McDouble. Do you want to know one example of you sacrificing financial freedom for survival? Food. I would be financially free to buy more if I didn't have to eat. However, I do have to eat for my survival, so I must purchase food. Nothing functionally has changed computing forever. This is fucking normal. You sacrifice financial freedom for survival every day. 3 times a day, usually, when you go to get food. This is basic, understandable shit. If you're not computing forever.
out.
The point now is very different. The point now is political power. You gin up a crisis and you demand the population submits to your will or else.
An artificial crisis that you would use to leverage for political power, that if you don't allow that political power to be given to very specific political pundits, else bad things will happen? You mean like with the Great Replacement theory? If we don't give our political power to President Donald Trump, the brown people will continue to immigrate into America, that will continue to cause the Great Replacement. White people will be totally eradicated by this culture that is not our own. Holy fucking shit! You guys understand it! You get it! You understand! You're just not willing to look in a mirror when you understand.
And as you do that, of course, you don't need to fight fair or acknowledge democracy or even make a rational case for your position. You do whatever it takes. You'll even use children if it helps.
Yes. This is a thing that all sides do. It's called winning hearts and minds. You do it better through a child than anyone else. But it's okay when someone like Trump does it. That's okay. That's fine.
Helps. When you use children to demand power, they become a kind of human shield. You can hide safely behind them. No one can criticize you. But who would do something that unscrupulous?
So, have you ever thought, maybe, just maybe, that Greta doesn't want her world to be on fire, and as a result, she did this of her own accord? Again, her parents may have eked her into doing so, but at the exact same time, that's not saying, oh, the left is behind this conspiracy to hide behind a single child. Rather, it seems that this side is talking out of both sides of their mouth. Because what I have seen, largely, is that the majority of people arguing against Greta's speech have not argued against anything Greta has said. They've argued against the fact that she is a child. They've argued against the fact that she is young. They've argued against the fact that she's autistic. They argued against her looks. They've argued against everything revolving around Greta instead of arguing about the points that she's made. It seems to me that the side, Tucker Carlson's a piece of shit, by the way, for people who don't know, but it seems to me that the side that is arguing largely about her usage as a child is actually right-wingers and not left-wingers. Just throwing that out there. Because it's not the left, I've seen usually, that are going, no, you can't argue against what she said. She's a child. It's the right that are attacking the fact that she's a child. And most of the lefties that I know, again, this is not saying all of them, but most of them that I know have been arguing against the fact that people are attacking her for being a child, as opposed to saying that what she's saying is right because she's a child. I have, however, seen a lot of people saying that what she's saying is wrong because she's a child. I see that happening from one side, so it seems to me that Tucker Carlson in this clip is speaking from both sides of his mouth. Unfortunately, the other side of his mouth is located somewhere around his anus.
Anyone who would do that is someone who would literally do anything to seize control.
And so that's where I'm going to leave this video for now. But it's becoming very clear that the left is now throwing a massive global tantrum in their push for power. And so it seems fitting that they're appealing to children to lead their cause, I guess. But there is a very obvious acceleration.
Probably because children have more years to live and therefore may actually give two shits about their planet. I don't know. Has there ever been any pro-environmentalist marketing to children ever? Ever in the history of ever. Have we ever had that? Tell you what. I'm going to show you one overt pro-environmentalist thing that was pushed on children at one point, and then I'm going to show you one that was a little less overt, but both were marketed exclusively to children. All right? We're going to do it. We're going to do it right now. And it's going to be fun. We ready to have fun? Do. Hold on. Where's my use in every video? Do I not have a stream folder here? I guess I don't need it. It doesn't go in fan art, damn it. It goes here. Alright, so I have one example, and now I will grab another. And I hope that all of you will be able to understand why I have grabbed the examples that I have here in a moment. Let me look in the live chat and see what examples everybody is looking at. Oh, Sean, you're close. You have one of them right, but that is not the closest thing. Oh, no. Here. Allow me to show you obvious example 1 and subtle example number 2. Right? So, obvious example is this guy. Right? Everybody is familiar with Captain Planet. Everyone. And people seem to forget that Captain Planet was a thing. Okay. Somebody also mentioned the Lorax in the chat. The Lorax would be a good example of this as well. However, I have another example for you. I have another one. Here's an example of another character that has an incredibly pro-environmentalist message, but this one was very subtle. Now, I hope that somebody in the audience knows where I'm going with this, but if not, please, allow me a moment. Just a moment of your time. Let's go ahead and look at the intro for Sonic the Animated Series. Okay? Now in this intro, I want you to see exactly what the freedom fighters who live in a forest are fighting against. Okay.
Sonic the Hedgehog, too fast for the naked eye. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic, he can relate.
So we have the people who live in a forest fighting against industrialization.
Sonic, he's got an attitude. Sonic,
that literally turns everyone into robots. Really? And one of the things that Robotnik does throughout the entirety of the series is pollute the environment. But it's done in such a subtle way that nobody actually catches on instantly that it's a pro-environmentalist message.
Look out when he storms through. Sonic the Hedgehog, don't doubt what he can do. Sonic the Hedgehog, Sonic.
Can I point out what they're engaging in right now, by the way? As freedom fighters, they are literally engaging in terrorism. Just throwing that out there.
He can really move. Sonic, he's got an attitude. Sonic, he's the fastest thing alive. He's the fastest.
They literally just depowered an entire city that possibly had hospitals in it in an effort to fight against globalized industrial pollution. Just throwing that out there. That show's dark. That show's really fucking dark. Okay. Dab, eco-terrorism. So, also, Final Fantasy VII was brought into the conversation as well. Yeah, no, Final Fantasy VII is a good example of this on top of everything else, because Shinra is literally just an industrial complex. Xandru says, even worse, the city's full of cyborgs who need electricity to live. Yeah. The comics are pretty dark, too. Yeah, no, the Archie comics are incredibly dark. Cirrus, Christopher Columbus was a murderer and Sonic was a fucking terrorist. Am I wrong, though? Can you deny either of those statements based on the information that I've provided? In fact, actually, I'm going to go ahead and have this information there and available. If you're in my Discord, in the general chat, I am posting that because it's wonderful. I hope your I hope your childhoods can survive the fact that they've been completely and utterly destroyed throughout the course of this stream. Keon, see, here's the problem. This was an American show. this show was not produced by Japan. This one was actually produced here in the States. In fact, actually, the majority of Sonic the Hedgehog anything has been produced primarily in the States for over a decade. Because it typically turns out that Sonic is more profitable in the States, and ever since Sonic 2, we've been doing most of the development in the States. Because Sonic 2 was developed by Sega of America, whereas Sonic CD was developed by Sega of Japan. And in fact, after Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, they realized that their primary market was the States. And this is why we've actually had a lot better voice syncing since then, because they voice sync the games now first for the American market and then retroactively for the Japanese market. So, yeah. Granted, Sonic X was produced in Japan, though, so there is that. So Titus and Likewise were fighting computing forever. Oh, God. What's the one where Sonic had a mom and siblings? That one was Sonic Underground. It was the lighter aspects of the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehogs and the darker aspects of Sonic the Saturday Morning Cartoon. And it married them into one show that was kind of cringy. I'm going to be honest. All the Sonic shows are a little cringy, but the Saturday morning one is at least serviceable and is a good show in its own right. Jonah Epstein says there was actually a lot of infighting between Sega of Japan and Sega of America in regards to Sonic. Well, yeah, because Sega of Japan is where it started. But Sega of America understood the character infinitely better. And Jared Whitaker says, you've improved my childhood tenfold. Hopefully I have, though. So, Super Chats-wise that I haven't gotten to quite yet. Real Lock said, for $2, social contract, my dudes. Yeah, you engage in it. It's an axiom. And Darth Killer for 2 says, pro-environmentalist Final Fantasy VII, which we got to as well. Lord Blexurus, capitalism brings you pollution and protests against it at the same time since 2000. Oof. Jack, you are incorrect in that statement. While the X-Men cartoon is an amazing show, there are other Saturday morning cartoons that are definitely worth your time. One is the Sonic Show. 2, I would like to introduce you to the catchy theme that is the X-Men Evolution theme. Here, enjoy. May it be stuck in your head. It will never leave now. Enjoy some good old childhood. And that's as much as I'm going to play because copyright's a thing. So yeah, for those who don't know, that is X-Men Evolution, which is a incredibly good show in its own right. Sir's opinion on 4Kids. I think 4Kids is a company that destroyed many shows that could have been amazing. For instance, I would have loved to see what happened if Yu-Gi-Oh! Had the exact same voice actors, but was instead helmed by Funimation. I would have loved to see that. Personally. 4Kids destroys anime like Trump destroys America. Not wrong. Jack, did Jack say something earlier that I missed? Super Mario Bros. Super Show was great. So, my opinion on the Mario Brothers show is that the show was markedly improved during the Super Mario Brothers 3 and Super Mario World era, but in its initial running, it was a nonsensical mess. Just my thoughts. Are we done with computing forever for now? Yes, we are done with computing forever. I would like to get into one more video before I do that whole heading off thing. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look into the video suggestions dump area of my Discord and see what I find there. Where is it? Where is video suggest? I can never find this thing. Discussion videos. Aha! Video suggestions. Oh boy. How's PragerU sound for everybody?
Here's a riddle. How is it that ever since the government began telling us what to eat, we've gotten fatter and sicker? In 1977, when the government first set dietary guidelines, the average American male weighed 170 pounds. He now weighs 197.
Okay, so there's a couple reasons for this. One, this is a correlation issue, where correlation does not mean causation. You can actually mark that higher ice cream sales lead to more murders in many places of the country. Because the more ice cream sales there are in an area, the more murders happen in that area. Does this mean that Ben & Jerry's is responsible for the hot and spicy new flavor, the blood of the innocents? No, that's not what it means. That's not how we do data. Though I'm sure PragerU thinks that is in fact how we do data. Ziggy says yes. So no. I'm going to go ahead and take a guess that this is PragerU trying to say that, oh, the food that the government is saying is more healthy is not healthy, and therefore we need to hold issue with the government, something like that. I'm guessing, right? Instead, there are other factors that we need to look at. For one, let's go ahead and look at one of the things that is marketed infinitely more now, more so than it used to be back in the day: fast food. This McDouble is going to be the greatest prop of all time. I'm going to be able to reference this more times than any other prop in a video, and I didn't even fucking mean for that. Also, Zach just donated $1. Thank you very much for that, Zach. But considering how much these are marketed to people, considering how much fast food is marketed to people, again, I would like to point out to PragerU that your beef isn't with the government. Your beef is not with various people who are setting up what we understand as healthy and not healthy. Your issue is actually with capitalism. And I'm not even being facetious here. I can actually support this. Look at the history of the sugar industry. A lot of studies about sugar that are 30, 40 years ago, many of these studies actually, or probably even further back than that, many of these studies said that sugar was an essential part of your diet and you should consume more sugar because it was good for your heart, and fat was actually the problem with American diets. Having more fat in your diet meant you had more problems. You should eat sugar. Sugar is better. Sugar is better for you. Hey, it even tastes better. The sugar industry boomed as a result for paying for biased studies. So, what did we actually find is the case when it came to many of these dietary issues? Well, what we found is that sugar is a huge fucking problem, and that fat is not quite as much of a problem as people thought it was. In fact, actually, many of the issues levied at fat were actually sugar's issues. Many low-fat foods back in the day actually replaced fat with sugar as a flavor substitute in order to be healthier, literally replacing the pseudo-benign part of the meal with the infinitely more problematic one. As a result, we've seen a spike in things like diabetes because these things literally hurt your body's ability to produce insulin. So, how did this happen? How did so many biased studies make their way into the market? Well, they were paid for by biased organizations. Well, how did this happen? Gee, how would you have multiple organizations with a conscious bias fabricate data? I recognize that there's going to be like one dumb fuck in the audience that tries to look at that and go, aha, that argument can be applied to climate change. Well, yes, you're right. That could be applied to climate change if we did not have a consensus as opposed to a handful of studies that are referenced constantly ad nauseum. The difference here is that in one case, we have studies that are referenced ad nauseum and have now been discredited in the case of sugar, whereas with climate change, we actually have a consensus of 97% of scientists that are willing to answer polling on it. Mind checking Discord DMs. You need to pull this up. It has a ton to do with what you're talking about. Oh, sweet. Let's go ahead and do this right now. Annie has actually been wonderful and provided us with 15 things that are correlatives that have nothing to do with one another, but we can actually use as measurement devices, much in the way PragerU was attempting to do in the first 20 seconds of their propaganda. Suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation. Number of people who drown by falling into a pool correlates with films Nicolas Cage appeared in. U.S. spending on science, space, and technology correlates with suicides by hanging. Per capita cheese consumption correlates with the number of people who died by becoming tangled in their bedsheets. Consume the cheese for genocide. That's what I hear from that. Divorce rates in Maine correlate with the per capita consumption of margarine. The age of Miss America correlates with murders by steam and hot vapors or hot objects. When Miss America is 25 years old, so too are the people who die by steam 25 years old. Strange. Computer science doctorates awarded in the U.S. correlate with total revenue generated by arcades. So please, go spend more money on Tekken and Mortal Kombat if you want there to be more computer science doctorates awarded to people who have worked very hard. Or perhaps these two things have nothing to do with another. They are correlates. They are not causal. Per capita consumption of mozzarella cheese correlates with civil engineering documents. So do me a favor. If you eat all the cheese, you will be contributing to genocide. But if you eat specifically mozzarella cheese, this genocide is offset by civil engineering doctorates that can be awarded to people who deserve them. People who drown after falling out of a fishing boat correlate with the marriage rates in Kentucky. If you are an officiary, and you are getting more people married in Kentucky, you are a direct contributor to drownings, you monster. This is why data is so easy to manipulate.
It's not any better for women, 145 to 170. And you don't need an academic study to know the same thing is happening to kids. Just look around.
You don't need an academic study. Just look around. Don't look at data. No, don't look at data. Look at the trees. That's all the evidence you need for God's existence. Oh, wait, we're not talking about that right now. Sorry.
Weight gain has real-life consequences. The percentage of Americans diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, a condition that can lead to severe medical issues, has risen from 2% in 1977 to over 9% in 2015.
So, let's do a fun thing. Why the spike in diabetes? Let's see here. Is that iron? No, that's tin. I don't need that. Why are more people diabetic? Facts and trends. Diabetes is at an all-time high. In 2015, 9.4% of the population had diabetes, including 32 million adults. Between 1992 and 2010, the number of people living with diabetes tripled. Figures suggest that the incidence is leveling off and may even be falling, but it remains unclear whether this will continue. Causes. Type 2 diabetes is a combination of genetic and lifestyle factors due to excess body fat, high blood pressure, having a close family member with the condition, higher age, a history of... Oh, here's an interesting one, higher age. So would it also happen to be that people being able to survive more and for longer due to the medical industry being more ubiquitous and helping more people insofar as they have the money to be helped, would it also help with these statistics? Like, people would develop diabetes who otherwise wouldn't because, well, they would have died earlier. Fun things. Let's see. As obesity has become more prevalent in the last few decades, so too has the rate of type 2 diabetes. In 2013, more than 1 in 3 people in the United States were considered to have obesity. In 1995, obesity affected 15.3% of Americans. There's a link between obesity and diabetes. The reason for the link, though, remain unclear. Oh, but don't look at any of these studies. Don't do that. That would be bad. The location of the body fat appears to play a role as well. And I cannot find any more relevant information in here. So, their stats are correct. But let's see here. And... let's see. When did the sugar industry stop shifting the blame to fat? Oh, hold on. So 1977 to 2015 is what we're looking at. Well, the sugar industry paid scientists in the 1960s to play down the link between sugar and heart disease and promote saturated fat as the culprit instead. The internal sugar industry documents, recently discovered by a researcher at the University of California, and they were published, suggest that 5 decades of research into the role of nutrition and heart disease, including many of today's dietary recommendations, may have been largely shaped by the sugar industry. 5 decades of it? Hold on a minute. If we're looking from the 1960s to the present day, we're looking at about 5 to 6 decades. 5 to 6 decades paid for by the sugar industry, where a bulk of our research, where most of this comes from, and we know that increased sugar consumption leads to a higher risk for things like diabetes? Oh boy, PragerU, I found your culprit. It seems to be market capitalism again. What a fucking weird thing. Holy shit. How strange. What a strange and weird circumstance we find ourselves in. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird how this all seems to dial back to that each and every fucking time? Strange. Very strange.
In hard numbers, that's 5 million people to over 30 million people. How did this happen? It all started innocently enough in the 1950s when President Dwight Eisenhower had a heart attack while in office. Suddenly, the issue of heart health became a national obsession.
And where did most of the funding for those studies come from? They came from the sugar industry to move the blame from fat to sugar. I wonder if PragerU is going to talk about that.
Keep in mind, this was an era when scientists had harnessed the power of the atom, unlocked the secrets of DNA, and cured once incurable diseases like polio. Surely there had to be a scientific solution to heart disease. There was. And a charismatic medical researcher from the University of Minnesota named Ansel Keys had it. Cholesterol, Keys claimed, was the villain of the heart disease story. His now famous 7-country study determined conclusively, in his mind at least, that people who consumed high amounts of fat, specifically saturated fat, had higher cholesterol levels and thus higher rates of heart attacks. Lower your fat intake, and you would lower your heart disease risk.
I think they're actually going to bring up the studies. They might actually bring up this issue. I wonder how they're going to frame it, though, because that's probably going to lead to a lot of how I respond to this.
The ever-confident Keys spread the gospel. As an influential member of the American Heart Association, he was in a very strong position to do so. There was only one problem. Keys' study was bad science. The sample size was so small, the data collection integrity so shoddy, and the lifestyle variables between the countries he studied so great that his research had no scientific validity.
Okay. So are we going to talk about the actual history behind those studies and who they were paid for and the bias behind them and why they were engineered to be that way? Is there a... Are we going to do that? Because, like, that would aid a lot in this conversation, I'm certain.
In other words, he asserted a conclusion he couldn't prove. When other scientists questioned Keyes' conclusions, they were invariably met with stern responses like people are dying while you're quibbling over data points, and there are great benefits and no risks to adopting this new way of eating. In 1973, the American Heart Association set the dietary limit on saturated fat at 10%. And in 1977, the US government followed suit. Where did the 10% value come from? It didn't come from any scientific data. It was merely a government committee's best guess. This was despite contrary evidence like the 1957 Western Electric Company employee study, showing no difference in heart attacks in those who ate more or less saturated fat.
Yeah. And again, the issue that I'm having here is that we're not actually talking about the issue itself. You only have 5 minutes in this video, Prager. You can get to the point, I'm sure.
A longer-term study of the same Western Electric subjects in 1981 reached the same conclusion. But again, no one wanted to hear it. To make this all easier to understand and to spread the message to schools, the food pyramid was created. That's the chart you first...
Ah, the food pyramid. The ultimate reason why people are fat.
...saw in 3rd or 4th grade, with all the supposedly good foods at the bottom, meaning eat a lot of those, and the bad foods at the top. Eat those ones sparingly.
Okay, so let's take a look at the food period. Not period. Food pyramid. Look at the actual food pyramid. What do we have here? Healthy eating food pyramid. What does a regular food pyramid look like? I'm going to go ahead and take this one from Harvard. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and link this one for everybody in the chat so you can see as well. That way you guys can see as well. All right. So, food pyramid. Whole grains, healthy fats and oils, vegetables and fruits at the bottom. Fish, poultry, and eggs next, nuts, beans, and tofu after that, and then dairy and vitamin D and calcium. And then use sparingly red meat and butter, refined grains, white bread, rice, and pasta. Well, let's see here. Healthy eating are a grocery list. Vegetables. Consume more of those. Makes sense. Consuming more fruits, as long as you don't have an issue with sugar, then yeah, sure, that makes sense as well. Although, there may need to be, depending on your diet, a higher focus on things like protein. Just throwing that out there. Ashley in the chat says, industry got its hands on the pyramid despite researcher protestation. Also, that pyramid is out of date as fuck. Jonah Epstein says, didn't they replace the food pyramid with the food plate diagram? That, I'm not 100% certain. I am not certain of. But what it seems to be, that this food pyramid, the way it is built, is, from what I can understand, based on old research and too many fingers in the pies, as it were. Whole grains are high in fiber. The problem with processed breads and pastas is they're processed. Yeah, when you process food, you end up adding a lot of sugars in it unnecessarily, and those processed sugars end up being a lot of your issue. White bread has this issue a lot.
What our kids are fed in school, what our military troops are fed on bases, what sick people are fed in hospitals, what crops we plant, and how we raise our cattle are all predicated on this deceptive nutritional concept.
Okay, so what would an updated one look like? Well, we have a food plate now that Ashley has just linked in the chat. Let's see here. Make your plate fruits. Make half your plate fruits and vegetables. Move to low-fat and fat-free milk or yogurt. Vary your protein routine, so don't just eat red meat or white meat or dark meat. Eat varying types of meat. Drink and eat less sodium, saturated fat, or added sugars. Make half of your grains whole grains. Seems fairly useful, seems fairly intuitive, and definitely better than the way the food pyramid is set up.
As Americans ate less saturated fat, margarine instead of butter, processed oils like corn oil instead of olive oil, low-fat milk, low-fat yogurt, and so on, they also started to eat more heart-healthy grains, exactly what the food pyramid and the updated version called My Plate advise you to do. As the consumption of saturated fat decreased by almost 40%.
Hey, My Plate's the website I'm looking at right now. What a concept.
The consumption of refined grains, carbohydrates that convert to sugar in the body, increased substantially. Total intake of calories also began to increase. This happened in no small part because food companies took advantage of the low-fat craze.
Not just the low-fat thing. I'm going to reference back to this again. So, fast foods rely a lot. I'm going to go ahead and pull it out. All right, so more than 50% of this sandwich is grain. This is bread. Okay, it's a McDouble. I'm also going to take a bite because I'm fucking hungry. But a majority of that is bread. Why is that? Well, fast food companies want to make food that is easy to create and easy to sell and easy to eat when you're driving, which means bread is going to be used a lot. Fast food companies are going to have more of a want for breads to increase in sales, because an increase in sale in bread means that their profits go up as well, because most of their food is based on bread. Hell, even most of the chicken that you get from a fast food company is fried. Hashtag not sponsored. I wish I was sponsored. I'm sponsored by one place, but it's a sex store. Shall take over the stream with OWO. The stream needs lots of Oro. They have grilled chicken, but people don't want it. You know, it also doesn't help that there's a flavor that you get from good bread or you get from like fried chicken tenders that is very hard to replace otherwise. So there's also a reason why dairy is its own food group on the pyramid, despite over half the population being unable to digest it. Hashtag industry.
They lowered fat and increased sugar. Suddenly, supermarkets were full of supposedly healthy, low-fat, high-sugar foods. It remains that way today.
Boy, blaming the supermarkets, blaming the market for its inability to effectively adapt to society's needs. I had no idea you guys were so woke, Prager. It's weird. Blaming the market for its inability to adapt to society's needs? That sounds like a really left-wing talking point. Wow. How fucking weird.
Foods that are high in sugar stimulate reward centers in the brain and leave us wanting more. Thus, the famous line about potato chips, bet you can't eat just one.
Okay, yes, but here's the problem. Here's a huge issue, right? they're arguing that we're eating the wrong things, they're not the healthy things, but then the actual thing on the screen is somebody eating potato chips. There is no market research to show that potato chips are incredibly healthy for you. That's not a fucking thing. At least not in a way that would be considered not incredibly biased. So wait a minute. The argument that PragerU is going to fall into is that, aha, they said that the healthy things that you should be eating are healthy, but they're not healthy, so you should eat different things. Stop eating potato chips. Those are the things that they say are healthy, except nobody fucking says that. I'm so confused.
The end result is a fatter population with greater and greater health issues, like type 2 diabetes, a problem that's getting worse, not better. How do we get ourselves out of this spiral?
Well, I can tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go straight to my local supermarket, and I'm going to get some spicy Doritos. Because apparently, to own the libs, you have to eat a well-done steak with a light bulb shoved in it. That's a real thing. Please don't ask. Twitter's a nightmare place. But you know what? I'm going to go eat some tasty Doritos, and that's going to be my way of owning PragerU after this. That's what I'm going to do. That's my plan.
There are many answers. For some, it's a low-carb, high-fat diet. For others, it's a Mediterranean diet. For some, it's vegetarianism. For others, it might be something else. You need to find the best solution for you.
Pikachu does not know about this. Hold on. Where is it? Okay, so I'm not shitting you. It may have sounded like I pulled the well-done steak with light bulbs shoved in it to own the libs out of my ass. But I assure you, I did not pull that out of my ass. In fact, here it is for everybody who wanted to be given this wonderful bit of nightmare fuel. Have fun with this image. Fox News anchor to own the lefties attempts to drink a steak with light bulbs shoved in it. But we're the snowflakes, right? But they want so bad to make people like me angry, they will shove light bulbs into perfectly good steak and attempt to drink it. That's a thing. That on Fox News. This is recent. I feel very owned right now. What's the point of that? Apparently it makes people angry. Apparently. I just... Truly the peak of leftism is light bulbs. So wait, were you guys not aware that this is a thing that happened? Is this news? I mean, literally it was news. It was on the news, but like... You know. Here, in fact, enjoy this, enjoy the anchor actually consuming this lovely monstrosity. Because we got that too. You know, to own the libs, everybody. I'm going to consume this cheeseburger. What's she owning? Herself. Because if you desperately want to own the libs so bad that you're willing to make yourself suffer, then you probably need to think of a different career. This is coming from somebody who likes owning right-wing fundamentalist Christians and Muslims so much that I torture myself with their content. So I guess I need to find a new career. Darth Killer 5 says, it does make me angry, but probably not for the reasons Fox News thinks. What a waste of good food. Yeah. Or like when Trump said that he eats his steaks well done because he's a germaphobe. So everybody started eating their steaks well done to own the libs. But it's like, why? Why would you eat your steaks well done? That's the sign that you're just a monster. If you eat your steaks well done, that's a sign that you and I can't be friends, at least not on a deep level.
And that's really the point.
Thanks, PragerU. I was going to say the same thing.
We need to take responsibility for our own health. If the food pyramid has taught us one thing, it's this. Don't rely on the government to take care of you. I'm Dr. Brett Scher, cardiologist for Prager University.
Okay, so, again, the issue with this is not the government, because the government is not what pushed this whole thing. It was significant portions of the sugar industry that pushed a lot of the stuff here. And Prager did not touch on any of that because their precious unregulated capitalism that allows capitalism to become incredibly rife with corruption, that's the thing that PragerU fights for. Because Dennis Prager likes money. A lot. Speaking of the left, isn't it funny that ANCOMs exist? ANCOMs definitely don't want a lot of government control. For those who don't know, they are anarcho-communists. They want small government as well. What a fucking weird world. So this was all a big shit on Medicare for All? They really stretched it that far? Yes, it's PragerU. What do you expect? What do you expect? They stretch everything to own anything that would be good or useful for society. That's what they do. Whew. Hamable, I don't think Vosh is actually an anarcho-communist. I think he's an anarcho-syndicalist. From what I understand from my conversations with Vosh. Speaking of Gutane, I was actually on their stream the other day doing my Alex Jones impression for them so that they could earn money for the Trevor Project. So that was fun. I enjoyed that. So for those who don't know, Gutane, I can't remember how to pronounce that. They have a channel that is another lefty channel. Obviously, their thing is mainly media criticism. And they were doing a live stream for multiple days in order to gain money for the Trevor Project. And they said that they wanted to get somebody who could do an Alex Jones impression in there, so I volunteered. And they accepted me in to do my Alex Jones impression. And through the course of me doing my Alex Jones impression, in a reading of right-wing smut between Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder, we actually earned $3,000 for that Trevor Project. That was neat. So, Hannibal says the line is very thin between ANSYN and ANCOM. I think the line between anarcho-syndicalism and anarcho-communism, though, is that anarcho-syndicalism has functionally existed as a society pre-World War II, and we can actually point to it in history. Whereas anarcho-communism is something that it is much harder to peg down in any society. So I think the line is that one of those two is a very realistic thing because it has happened in countries before, whereas the other one is not quite as realistic. So, do fun shit. Okay. What do these groups need anyway? Looking for group raids or fin crawl. I need RFD. So, how is everybody doing now that we are done with the PragerU video that attempted to tinfoil hat everything, because that's what they do. Next, Delano TV. Okay, no. We do not do Delano TV. We do not. Jack says, wait, is Prestor back in Stormwind? Prestor, I mean, this is World of Warcraft Classic, so yes, Katrana Prestor is back in Stormwind. Opinion on Mark Dice? I don't know who Mark Dice is. I do not. What kind of computer do I have? It is a self-built computer. You can have a look at it here. It is running 16 gigabytes of RAM, though I can't run them at their fastest speed, unfortunately. I am running an EVGA 660, I believe, for my video card. Puffalopagus was nice enough to donate a very large cooling system for my AMD Ryzen that was overheating, which is my processor. Speaking of Puffalopagus, again, if you guys look in the description of this video, we actually have the fundraiser that Puffalopagus was running because of what happened with their father. So if you guys do have a chance to go check out that fundraiser, please do. They're a friend of the channel, and they did ask for help in that regard, so please do check in there. And if you are watching this afterwards, then please check there as well. Spirit Science, I'm going to freaking kill you, Tony. Absolutely not. We are not doing Spirit Science. However, we have actually been on air for about 2 hours, or more than that, on YouTube. And that is usually more than I'm willing to do on YouTube. So what I'm probably going to do is hop off. If I stream again, it will be over on Twitch. So please go follow me on Twitch if you guys want to go see more streaming over there. But that will be after a date, because tonight is also date night. So I'm going to have to do that. So with that, so ever heard of ESO? Yes, I have, but I'm not an Elder Scrolls fan, so. Wait, Cirrus is almost done with the drawing. Bumblin', this is not a not one of the normal streams where I would throw the fan art section up, because I don't have any real estate on the screen for the fan art to go at the moment. But I can make sure that it gains some priority on future releases for videos. Ah, Bumblin', why? Let me see. Fine, I will check in the fan art section. Where am I? What is going on? Why is everything a nightmare in here? Hold on. I'm doing stream stuff. Though I can't find fan... There's so many fucking channels! God, I'm trying to find a thing! Jesus Christ. Come on.
No, yo, I gotta tell you something, cause like, I'm sitting here watching a fucking video. You wanna know what comes on the fucking video? A fucking, like, WoW classic fucking ad. But you wanna know what? It was so... It said, join WoW Classic. Mancrick needs your help.
Yeah, to find his wife. You need to help find Mancrick's wife.
No! That shit, and it scared me. I was like, how do you know what server I'm on? Leave me alone. You don't work for the bourgeoisie, that's the birds.
So what's funny is that after I mentioned that we needed to get more people playing on Mancrick, we needed more people on Mancrick. There's a Baron's quest called Mancrick's Wife, where you're trying to find his wife. His wife has abandoned him. And so when I sent that to Astral, Astral was like, yeah, everybody's on Mancrick except his wife. Okay, let me find the fan art section real quick, because Bumblin' Bee is going to murder me if I do not find the fan art section. I can't find the fan art section on my own Discord. Please help. There we go. Okay, I see it. Okay, yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I need to show this one to everybody. This is good. This is good. Okay, everybody, thank Bumblin' Bee for the monstrosity that you're about to witness. Go ahead and get this aspect ratioed. Mother, feed me. It's the steak with the straws, everyone. It's the steak with the straws. Mother, feed me. This is perfect. Mother, feed me. It's not a cursed image. This is a blessed image. This image is blessed. Oh my god. I'm so tempted to do a fully colorized version of this image now and use it for something. I need an adult, but I'm 26 and the news anchor is older. I mean, if it's blessed by one of the Chaos God, what then? New profile picture for Surus? I will make that a profile picture somewhere. I will. I will do it. I will have to. Jesus is Lord. Remember, there's nothing wrong with serving a god. Nothing at all. But having an imaginary enemy, that's pretty cringe, bro. That's pretty cringe. And I think on that note, we'll go ahead and hop out. Hope you guys enjoyed. I am hopping out.